Welcome back to the Monte and Wolf Show. Sorry about the delay in starting this if you're watching it live. We were not, in fact, DDoS. This is not pre-recorded. We are live, unlike the LCK itself. It's been a week of fiestas, Wolf. We've got a DDoS fiesta. We have Fiesta coming back in and being subbed in for Nongshim. And we have KT versus Dplus, the fraud fiesta that we all deserved. Which fiesta would you like to discuss first?
I guess we have to talk about the DDoS issues.
You sound so depressed.
I mean, I am so depressed. Like, I I can't tell you guys when I record and when I've been going into work, but like, it's been way earlier than I'm supposed to, and like my whole schedule has been changed. So like, I haven't been able to go to the gym. Uh, because my gym closes after LCK, normally ends, and we've had longer days because of this situation. And then I also started like Overwatch this week, so I've just been insanely busy. And the DDoS attacks are not making my life easier. Everybody's upset. The atmosphere at the studio is really down because obviously nobody wants to run a show like this because there's no fans, there's no energy, um there's no interaction. Like when I finish my cast, I like to go see like what people thought about the games. What are people saying on Reddit? Like imagine casting, in my case, desking that D plus Kia versus KT match, and then just having no one to tell about it, having no one to complain to, having there's no one out there to actually hear me go, I survived it, I did it, I did it 3 games. It's just a silent, empty studio, and I'm just like looking at my coworkers like, well, this is very depressing. And that's kind of been my life for the last week, and it hasn't been very fun.
Yeah, and not only that, but the viewership of LCK has dropped really dramatically. And like now it's basically just a kind of a VOD review like post match. So Cadril is now overtaken like the main broadcast as well a lot of the time. It's not good. I mean, this is really affecting viewership. And it is incredibly mysterious why this is why this happened and why it continues to happen. And for just so you guys know, it hasn't just been the LCK. This is the DDoSing has been an ongoing problem with a variety of Korean streamers as well. Do you want to describe kind of, because you're hooked in
So,
with the Korean community here, Wolf, like what's been going on in a more broad sense for
so
people?
there's been a lot of streamers who have been DDoSed, and some streamers have, like for example, been DDoSed and then moved to a different location, and some streamers even like very carefully moved to a different undisclosed location. Nobody knows where they're going. Turn their stream on, continue streaming, and then been DDoSed again.
Yeah,
Um,
and they switched internet providers as
internet
well. So
providers.
like yeah, they've done a lot of protections. So it's very weird when you can change your internet service provider, literally move, and you still continue to get DDoS.
So the one consistent aspect of this for these people being DDoS was that they were playing League of Legends on the Korean server. When one of these streamers, I actually don't know who it was, but I've seen this reported. Ashley Kang reported this. A lot of people have been talking about this. Moved from the Korean server to the Chinese server and just played, through China on a VPN and started playing on the Chinese server. No more DDoS. So that's like the running theory that everybody has online. I actually don't have information from Riot about this. Like normally, you guys know if I can tell you stuff, I will, and if I know things, I pretty much tell you guys. Riot won't tell me anything about this because it's such an insane security issue that like they won't give me information because even though I'm not gonna talk, if they had, I wouldn't tell you guys on this show, but I
Yeah, but
haven't
you would
talked
say
to.
you would just say like I know, but I can't talk
Yeah,
about it.
but I actually
You're
just
saying
don't
you
know.
actually just don't know.
I don't know because they're so secretive about this, as they should be, because even though they trust me, like if I did tell someone, or if they told me and somebody overheard, even like in the room of other people that are in Lol Park, like then maybe like some further exploits get found or something. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's tied to the attacks that we specifically had, but it seems to be that based on what the attacks were happening on the streamers, that maybe that is the common thread. I just don't know. Um, and I can tell you that Riot, has made a lot of effort to prevent DDoS attacks, but the way that the attacker is working and changing his plans up, makes it basically, my understanding is, even though they've taken all these precautions, we don't necessarily know if they're gonna work when we go back live, which we don't know when that's gonna happen yet either, right? It hasn't made an announcement about next week, and I think they're probably still figuring out what they want to do. But the biggest and most stressful thing for literally everybody, especially me as the guy who has to talk when it's happening, is that we think it's fixed, we go live, all the
Right.
fans come back in, and then we're fucked, and they
Right.
attack again,
And
and it's
then it's
all ruined. Like that
then it's
that's
Fear
the
X
biggest fear.
versus T1, right? Yeah, and then you get there. And you know what this seems to imply, Wolf, is that because of the consistent aspect is the Korean client, there must be something within the Korean client itself that is different from other regions' clients that is an exploit that is giving away the IP,
It could be.
right?
The Korean client has some unique properties to it. Like it has, when you log in, a splash screen that tells you like the age warnings, and like,
Yep.
it has blood and stuff like that, type of thing. There is another unique property of the Korean client that I think is not in any other region, which is that every hour it pops up with a message that tells you you've been playing League of Legends for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, every hour. Playing excessive League of Legends can affect your daily life, is what it says basically.
And
Um,
that's in all multiplayer games in Korea, guys. It's a government mandated requirement that there has to be these notifications within game. Isn't there also part of this that there's a lockout feature if you're below a certain age after a certain
uh,
time?
I think that there was a law, like we called it the Cinderella law, where after midnight, if you were under 17 or under 18, it might have even been 19. I can't remember. It's been so long. That it would just kick you out. But they repealed that law, as far as I know. So I don't think that's
Oh,
a
okay.
thing anymore.
Because
Which
that was true when the last time I lived in Korea and was like on the client, but I haven't heard about that recently, so it makes sense that it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I think they like 99% sure they got rid of that.
It was like after 10 p.m. if you were a minor, it would like eject you from League of
Yeah,
Legends.
after midnight. That's why we called
Oh,
the
it's after
Cinderella.
midnight. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
we called
yeah, yeah,
it
fair enough.
Cinderella law because it was like, "Oh, now you turn into a pumpkin, AKA, like, you can't play League of Legends anymore." Um, but yeah, it's,
There's also possibly some like PC bong internet cafe tech in there because for example when you play the game at a PC bong you have all the champions unlocked in League of Legends, so there are advantages to playing with your own account. You log in with your own account, but then all the champs are unlocked, so you have access to everything if you're playing in a PC bong as opposed to if you're playing at home where you actually have to like purchase the champs with like blue essence or RP or whatever. um
and I don't know, like, I'm not a tech person, like, I really don't know that much about how, direct denial service attacks work. I don't really know much except that it's just basically a bunch of traffic hitting all at once,
right.
and then basically creates lag, and in some cases just basically stops the internet from working because there's so much going through that same funnel. And I mean, that's my basic, like the internet is a series of tubes level of fucking understanding. But I don't know how like any of these things with the Korean client could have given someone the ability to attack it. I just really, maybe there's something where if the streamer has their username showing and then they could use that to find something. I have no idea, guys. I really just don't know. But I'm really tired of this, and I really hope that we can fix it. So maybe if it is client related, Rad's working on a patch. I can
I
only
mean, I
hope.
mean, it has to be some unique aspect of the client that is giving away IP addresses. Like that's the kind of logical conclusion of this. It's just what could possibly be doing that is present in Korea that isn't present in other regions. It's very weird.
Yeah. We don't play with LAN also. There's a
Right.
the tournament realm and stuff like that. So a lot of people have been asking me, how could it be DDoS when it's LAN? It's not actually LAN. It is
Yeah. I,
extremely
I
low
explained
latency.
this. I explained this on Summoning Insight, but the basically when you have the tournament realm. So the tournament realm is stored in a location that is typically close to the actual tournament site. For Worlds or MSI or when they're on the road, they actually do bring the tournament realm with them. So when they're traveling that way, they have consistent ping, right? Because when like I gave this example on Summoning Insight, but when you're at LCS, the tournament realm is inside Riot HQ, which is like across the street, right? In Korea, because everything is very close together, I assume that the tournament realm is in the same place that the normal Korean servers are, because everybody has 5 ping all the time, and if you're in Seoul, so it doesn't really matter. Um, but what I said was, when they're on the road, at least when I was casting Worlds in MSI, and they had the tournament realm on site, it requires 24/7 security, because if anybody ever steals that server, they would have access to the source code of League of Legends and would be able to create private League of Legends servers, which obviously Riot is terrified of happening. And so the reason why there probably isn't LAN at Lowell Park is that it would require 24/7 security 365 days a year for them to have a LAN server on site at the arena. And that is a crazy expense.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, the ping is so good that it really doesn't, it's not relevant.
Right.
But it may, I mean,
Most of the
it may
time, and
become relevant.
this problem has never happened before.
Yeah,
Like, look, I think it's clearly a very dumb problem, but also the game has been played like this for 10 years, and so it's never happened. So I do think that some leeway to Riot is justified here.
yeah, no, I mean, this is just something that nobody really saw coming, and it's a problem that's difficult to solve without fully understanding the attack. And Riot may have gotten to the bottom of this over the last week. And obviously we have today and tomorrow before Wednesday matches do start, whether they're live or recorded, which hasn't been decided yet, at least not officially. It's not posted online, so I don't know. But and like this has kind of been one of those like we are flying by the seat of our pants issues. There isn't like you don't pull out the guidebook to LCK and go, yes, when this happens, we do this. Like it is kind of a judgment call that has to be made about whether or not they think they have solved the problem and whether or not we can start. Because at some point, if you do go live and we get DDoS again and there are fans there, like it's just bad PR for Riot. It makes everything look disastrous, and continuing to do the safe recorded broadcast is safe. But at some point, with the viewership tanking and stuff, you have to go back. And no matter what, at some point, you will have to make that judgment call of, I think we fixed it. I hope that we fixed it and we go back and everything is fine. Because if you do it next week, or if you do it in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks, like that same fear will always be there. So it's really just a matter of like how confident you are that the issue is resolved. I mean, that's my take. Like that's the number one thing
Yeah,
I'm worried about.
and the reason why, I mean, you're doing it in advance at times that you're not announcing is because presumably the vulnerability is still there. And if the attacker knew when you guys were actually playing the games, they could DDoS you, even if, they can still affect the game, even if it's not being broadcast. And it
Yeah.
would affect the recording of the game too. So that's why you can't announce when you're actually doing the games.
One thing I can tell you, I guess, I feel like it's safe to say this. In every recorded game that we've done so far, there have been no DDoS attacks. So they have not been able to figure out how to attack us while we're doing our secret broadcast.
Or they haven't tried, or they don't know when the times are.
Exactly. So like it is working. Like we haven't had any ping issues. So I could guarantee you, worst case scenario, we can keep continuing like this, and the show will go on until it's solved. So it's not like we have to take a 2-week break because even the recordings are getting wrecked. So at least the precaution Riot has taken has been successful. So hopefully we can figure it out. My ideal scenario is in 2 days' time I'm back in the studio with full fans. I don't know if that's reasonable. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. If that's realistic, we might do like my other theory is like if I'm right, maybe I go maybe no fans, so that if we do have a tech issue when we go back to live, at least the fans aren't wasting their time sitting in the arena, and it's very stressful for everyone. Maybe we slowly roll it out back to like, okay, we did it for 4 days in a row with no problems. Now we can get fans back in, kind of thing. That would be my expectation, but I really just I don't know, guys. I'm hoping for the best because I'm super pissed about this, as you guys can imagine. Everybody is. I mean, nobody's happy. The DDoSers, some creator or DOSers are just some people who want to annoy me, and guess what? I'm fucking annoyed. And
I
nobody's like, well, that's so cool that he's ruined everything.
I mean, this next week is just incredibly important too for the LCK because having the lower viewership when we have the second iteration of T1 versus Gen.G, which is the match that we've basically all been waiting for and is most likely a preview of the finals of this league, is huge, right? We have Hanwha versus Gen.G this week. We have T1 versus Gen.G this week. We have Kwangdong versus T1. There are a bunch of like really actually quite good matches that are going to be coming up. And this should be, T1 versus Gen.G should be the peak of regular season viewership. And if it's not live, like, I just don't know if that's going to be true.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't think it will be great viewership if it's not live, because people just aren't, they're not able to identify when to watch it.
Yeah, because
So
the times got changed too to later.
exactly. I mean, even if you look on like Leaguepedia, it still has, as far as I'm looking at right now on mine, like the old start times, which are just not necessarily going to be accurate. But we don't know, and Leaguepedia can't know like when we're going to start, when they're going to go live. So it's just really difficult to actually follow that. I don't even know if like the LoL esports website has been updated. I'm guessing probably not, because the situation is so wild and weird and tricky. But I'm really looking forward to T1 versus Gen.G. And I know a lot of fans are probably looking forward to like F5ing and trying to get tickets for that and coming to watch live in the arena. That at this point in time, I would guess they probably will not be able to do. Knock on wood, maybe maybe it happens, but I don't see it. Um, but like these games will be affected by that. The players are, having to wake up at unusual times as well. Like their schedule has been affected. A lot of players have said, even Aiming, I think, directly said in his interview, like I had to wake up super early this morning to play this game, and and he's not super happy about it. The team's not super happy about that, right? But um, that's the situation we're in to make sure we can play the games. So I feel like I don't want to say like the gameplay has been affected. Like I can't say that factually, but I do have a feeling that some of the players are not playing at their 100% because of this. And everything has to be kept insanely secret. Um, and then when you're done with your game as a player too, you can't tweet about it. Like a lot of players like to do a post game tweet or post online somewhere or talk about it in their Discord and stuff like that. They can't do that because it's not live, and no one. If you did that, you spoil the results. You ruin the whole show. So it's very uncomfortable for everyone, and I don't like it.
It's back to the COVID times, Wolf. It's back to the COVID times. No fans. I mean, why don't they just let you stay at home? Just cast from home. More comfortable. Players playing for their facilities.
I mean, I think a lot of players probably want that, and I know that plan was actually discussed, but the thing is getting the players to be in the arena and doing content still happening, like Lolly Night, for example, the Korean post show on Sundays, like that show is still happening. Um, they want the players to be physically there so they can do all that stuff as well. And
Sure.
I think the teams want a better production than at home, but the players are like, man, if there's nobody here, like I'd rather play at home. And for me, like I'd rather go to LOL Park because LOL Park has a lot of, obviously got a good setup. Like, behind the scenes of Monte Wolf shows, my headset not working every time I like turn on the show, and the drivers are broken or something. But LOL Park is gonna work no matter what every time. Like, and they have really nice headsets there. They have obviously LOL Park has a ton of amenities and stuff like that. Like they have a bunch of snacks and there's water and tea and stuff you can get. I prefer working at LOL Park to working at home. I think that's every caster feels differently. I don't really like casting at home, even if there's no audience. But, anyways, beyond that, I think it'll probably continue to be played at Lowell Park for the foreseeable future, just because there's just so much there you can use. You can do the same camera shots, etc., etc.
Well, big bummer, Wolf. But the Fiestas didn't stop at the DDoSing because you got some Fiesta games, and you mentioned not being able to get any feedback was very difficult in the KT DPlus series. What kind of feedback were you wanting from this complete dumpster fire of a series?
I just wanted people to say, like, I'm sorry, casters, you had to go through that. Like, I want
You wanted a support group.
Yeah,
I
I wanted
see.
some thoughts and prayers tweets, Like, where are my fucking thoughts and prayers tweets? I didn't even cast that, okay? I was just sitting on the desk with Hooney, and he and I were just looking at each other going, "This is never gonna end." And it's not because of the meta, and it's not because of the draft. It's just because these two teams don't know how to push advantages. And then, of course, it just came down to Elder Flip. And it was, the Elder Dragon took away from us like the 99, or not 99, was it 92-minute generic Green Wings games. But the the truth is, like, on a day like this too, when I'm like not happy, I'm tired, I'm burnt out of the week of like pre-recorded broadcasts. The game would have probably gone to like 60 plus minutes if there was no Elder, because these two teams just were so scared of actually fighting each
I
other.
don't know. KT had Baron at the end. They did have the Baron.
True, that did happen for some weird circumstances. I mean, I feel like KT made one really good play where Perfect dropped the equalizer, and then we saw the engage come through with Barrel, and they actually followed up. I can't remember which game that was in. I think it was the first one. But whatever the
That was
Rumble
the first
game
one.
was.
The second one was the very clean, like KT win. They did almost throw by giving Smolder a bunch of random kills,
Yeah, that was yeah, the
but
second
they
game.
still had enough of a lead that they were able to close it out. I mean, basically, if you guys didn't see the series, game 1 and 3 were total fiestas. Where Dplus like magically wins after 50 minutes both times, and game 2 was a pretty convincing KT win. But it was very depressing to not see KT like close out either game 1 or game 3.
Yeah, and when you have advantages it's hard to push them when you're playing Rumble, for example. It doesn't have teleport, and so you really need to be communicating with your squad really well about how you want to move around the map as a death ball. And there were moments where, like on the Baron, KT actually did group and then push around together and like push Kingen out of a side lane and actually then, get some vision control and set up for an objective. There was like a little bit of that, but for the most part, it felt like Perfect didn't really know how to play teleportless Rumble, and then he ended up being way down on farm. And ultimately that didn't matter too much because everyone got full build because the game was so long. But it was weird because I thought in the first 2.5 weeks of play, I thought KT's macro sense and how they pushed advantages was very clean. Like, I felt very good about their macro. I'm not saying it's good as T1s or Gen.Gs, but I thought they were the third best. And now I'm like, it's just not there. And maybe it just felt like, to me, these two teams were so scared of committing to engage, and as the game gets longer, you know that if you fuck up that rel ult one time at the wrong moment at that 45-minute juncture, like, the game is just done. Like, you lose the entire game. And Lusa did the good rel ultimate with the good Showmaker ultimate, and they won. But there were many moments where they could have done it and they didn't, because I guess Lucid is just scared that he's going to lose the entire game for his team, and then Dplus is going to drop down in the standings, because this match is insanely important for standings since they're right next to each other. They're very evenly matched. And weirdly enough, KT won last time 2-1. This time Dplus won 2-1. So like they kind of equaled each other out in terms of how the regular season went, which is wild. That's just how close these teams are in terms of how ultimately KT ended up being evenly matched with Dplus. A few weeks ago, I would have laughed at you if you said that, but that is kind of where we're at now.
It's all right. I knew KT was giga fraudulent, Wolf. Don't worry about it. I knew the reckoning was coming. And here we go. KT now on a 4-match losing streak. Quality. After, they come up with the big win against Gen.G. They beat Nongshim. Last 2 weeks, literally lost all of their matches. And in fact, Wolf, across that time span, the only game they've won was game 2 versus Dplus Kia. So they are literally 1-8 in the last 2 weeks of competition,
To be
looking
fair,
mega fraudulent.
they have had the toughest strength of schedule.
They
And
can't even win games, Wolf. They can't even win games.
I know, but they will now. It's the KT roster coaster, where now they're going to beat all the more fraudulent East Side teams that have like 2 wins, and everyone's going to be like, "Is KT back? Wait
I
a
will not
minute."
be saying that.
No, you and I will not be saying that, but I think fans will be like, "Wait a minute, hold on, KT's good. They beat Fear X. Wait a second." So
Why do
this is
fans
what I
think
hate.
Fear X is good?
I don't. Do they actually think Fear X is good? I think they think FOX is a cool tricode, and they like to cheer for their boy Closer. And Chronicler told them Clear was good.
What? Clear is terrible.
Well, I mean, he told them he was good when he was on DRX, and he was good when he was
Oh,
on DRX Challengers.
I like Willer. Willer's fun.
Willer is the best player on that team, in my opinion. The rest of the players, I wish them a speedy recovery from their gameplay. I think Willer legit could have a Delight-esque arc where he goes to a really good team.
Willer has always been good.
Yeah.
He's the doo-doo of Live Sandbox.
Yeah, I mean, he might actually go to a good team at some point because not only is he good and has a really good sense for the game, he's clutch and he's an insanely positive force who communicates well, in comms. Like, he's super positive, he shares information a lot, he thinks about the game in a very broad sense as a jungler to where he's sharing information with all of his lanes and stuff like that. He is the type of player that you want to have on your team, despite his like relatively young age. Like, he's pretty experienced. Like, he came into the scene in 2021. Like, people forget, like, because he just suddenly was a mainstay on Live Sandbox. People were like, oh, he's a rookie. Not really. Actually played behind like Johan and some of the other junglers in 2021 Han Life Esports. Then he got promoted when they went to Worlds, and he played decent back then. But that was when he was like really a rookie. That was when he was super inexperienced. And then, fast forward a few years, the dude is just good on bad teams. And I feel like part of the success that Live Sandbox had, where they were like up in third place for a lot of last year, was due to him. His insane objective steals, his Elise, which was insane. I think
his Wukong has always been great.
Yeah, he's the one reason why this team sometimes does stuff. They sometimes get stuff done. I mean, Closer also like will occasionally get a good matchup like Zeka. Closer is like Zeka light for me, where he has like a really specific champion pool he's very good at, and if he gets the right matchup, he might pop off. And that's why Closer always ends up getting like POGs and ends up like popping up in the POG standings. Like, why is Closer over there? So, well, he has to carry every time they win, so he just gets POG a lot. I think there's nothing wrong with Henna, but Execute is like he coin flips everything, and so at best, it's 50-50. And Execute either looks like a god or looks like he's straight out of solo queue. And so we talked about FearX last week and why they're like the least interesting team because they're like not bad enough to be funny and they're not good enough to be relevant for us to discuss. But Willer, man, get him a team. I want like if Peanut decides to retire at some point because he's been around forever, just replace him with Willer or something, please.
I mean, might be better on Dplus too with how Lucid's been playing recently. So
True.
That said, Wolf, we do have to discuss something, which is Dplus's current 5-match win streak.
So they're the opposite. They played all the
Shit
easy
teams. I know.
So now everyone's like, wait, is someone back? And then we're gonna go through the arc of like they lose to all the good teams, and everyone's gonna be like, oh man, Lucid is not good, and like Showmaker's washed. I can already see it. I already see it. I can see the comments. I can see the tweets.
So Dplus, so you guys know, starting in week 4, they beat DRX, FearX, DRX again, Breon, and now KT. So their only non-fraudulent win was KT. And I thought, as you guys know, I predicted KT once again. I got burned once again by KT in my predictions this week because I thought Dplus was more fraudulent. Little did I know, Wolf, that we would have this. Actually, I did know that there would be this fiesta of a series. We did know that. We called that one. I just thought that Dplus would be slightly more fraudulent. However, the return of Zeri for aiming was potentially a factor that I did not fully consider because Zeri being back in the meta enables aiming to such a ridiculous degree. This guy was the chief Zeri merchant of his time period when Zeri was huge. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And also Kaisa is kind of back a little bit. We're seeing a little bit more Kaisa, so maybe that could be a good thing for aiming. They do play so next week. Dplus has, let's see, they have FearX and Nongshin.
Oh no, yeah, Nongshin and FearX, because Wolf, all of their important matches are backloaded into the last week where they face the gauntlet of T1, Gen.G, Guangdong, and Hanwha. That's their last 4 games. So, Wolf, we may be in a world where Dplus is legitimately a 9-5 team and then closes out the season at 9-9 because they can't beat any of those other teams. Because I still take Guangdong over them, by the way. Like, I have no faith in this fucking shit ass Dplus roster with Showmaker playing grasp Tank Azir every single game and fucking aiming just taking 1 billion gold for his Zeri and just denying Lucid any kind of relevancy. Why do I have to watch 50-minute games where Lucid's playing a tank and is on 2 items where aiming takes every single fucking penny of gold on the map to just change out his items a bazillion times and then they fluke themselves into a win? It fucking sucks watching this team. And
He
then
bought like
and then I
12
have to watch Kingen just play fucking Aatrox every game. The guy can't play any other champions, Wolf.
Yeah, well, I mean, Aatrox is really strong right now, so I will give him that this time. But you know, if he starts playing Aatrox after he gets nerfed, please, Riot, holy shit, this champion is so busted. Then maybe I'll criticize his Aatrox. But one thing I noticed from Dplus, in some of the comms that they show, because you know they'll occasionally show like a first-person view, or in the ending you can see some comms. Kingen seems to be doing a little shot calling. It's just like a little bit. I'm like, oh, shot calling on my Dplus. Wait a second, like I don't know if it should be Kingen, but I heard him like telling people to do stuff.
Is that a good thing? I watch these games with my eyes, Wolf. Like, I'm not sure this is
I
the
know. I'm just
endorsement that
saying,
you
like
believe it is.
it's usually just Showmaker yelling when he kills people, or it's there's not talking happening in my experience with Dplus. So Kingen kind of telling people to do stuff a little bit and sharing information about his lane state, like that was kind of that was new, that was different. It'll probably all collapse when they run the gauntlet in a few weeks, but um yeah, it's so funny you mentioned the Azir thing too, because they are so reliant on it right now. And I think it's smart. I think it's good. Like I actually think Tank Azir is actually insanely smart, and I think it may have
Okay,
been.
I will say it works in the compositions that they are running on this team because they're either running aiming on a hyper carry, king it on Aatrox, or like king it on Smolder in top lane. So the Azir can be an engage tool when it's built as tank and they have damage coming from elsewhere. But Wolf, given aiming's play and Kingan's play this year, I don't think that empowering them at the cost of Showmaker, who has been their best player by a long shot, is a stable way of playing this game.
Well, I think it's not it's not like sustainable, this drafting style as well, because eventually you're just gonna get.
They are going to get fucked up in best of fives with this,
Yeah,
Wolf.
exactly. It's just not a sustainable play style. Like it's very cool, and I think I don't know if Showmaker. I don't actually know the origin of the Grasp Azir. Showmaker was the first person to play it, and he played it repeatedly. And then we've seen other people do it now, but Showmaker seems to be the best at it, and he debuted it, so we can give him some credit. At least in the LCK. I don't know about if there was somebody playing it before in the LPL or anything like that. But anyways, um, but now he's kind of doing it every game, every chance he gets, and it kind of reminds me of when Faker had like 2 champions he could play after his injury last year, where I don't know what Dplus looks like when Showmaker's not on his ear anymore because he does it every game.
Or
Um,
Karma.
or Karma, yeah. And then Karma, he either like absolutely pops off and gets huge leads, or he absolutely runs it. Like he plays as if he's 5-0 when he's 1-5 on the champion. So we'll see if that works out for him. He's very aggressive. I think he has a good understanding of Karma, and so you know it's a strong pick. Gets you a lot of pride. Does a lot for you in draft. But I agree that the playstyle seems pretty predictable at this point, and the decisive gameplay is not there. The pushing of advantages and Lucid, like maybe threatening people when they have map control, that sort of stuff isn't there. So if you don't have map control and you fall behind for any reason against a good team, then what happens for Dplus? We've already seen that. Like I saw it in round 1. They lose in horrible fashion, unfortunately. So this meta to me feels pretty snowbally overall, and I think Dplus are on the, they're rolling down the hill. They're not being crushed by the snowball recently, but I think that will change when we move to those tougher matches. Obviously, Fearx and Nongshim, they should be able to win those. If they don't win either, if they mess up either of those, then it's like even worse than we thought. But I expect them to win both of those. It's just what happens after that. The T1 Gen.G Kwangdong Hanwha run that they might beat Kwangdong. Like I'm not ready to say Kwangdong is better than them because Kwangdong is also, they've been having a bit of a downturn themselves. So we'll revisit that when we get closer. But
I
C
mean,
plus they're frauds. Yeah.
all right, we say that about Kwangdong, okay? And yes, they did flub the Brion series, and they have taken single game losses off of like CV Max doing wacky drafts, but they actually end up winning the series. And this week, I mean, at least against Nongshim, their third game was extremely convincing, I would say. I mean, it's like sometimes they experiment a little bit, sometimes they drop a game here or there, but when they win, typically, they do put enemy teams away.
Yeah. I mean, I was both appalled in that series that they lost to Nongshim, but also kind of impressed with their final game as well. Like
Right. The
my
last game was very dominant.
yeah, my feeling about this team is they are clearly stuck in the rut between Bull having an insanely good early game, but his scaling picks are kind of terrible, and Bulldog having a terrible laning phase, but his scaling picks are great. So, we lived in a world where you could play like Callista Corki or Callista Azir, and Azir scaled and actually did a lot in the late game in the
Right.
past, and that would be perfect for them, except Callista's banned every game. Like when Callista was niche and you can kind of get away with that, like they could play that. But now they're kind of trapped in this dichotomy between bot and mid being, at odds with each other in terms of the play style. So Hui is perfect for Bulldog because it allows him to kind of just press buttons in the laning phase and he gets through it, and then he's an insanely strong leader. And so surprise, surprise, they're drafting him Hui all the time, but now teams are just banning it against Kwangno, and they're like, uh-oh. And then Bull's like, I'll play Smolder, it'll be fine. It's an easy champ. There's no way I'll mess this up. And the team is kind of struggling to figure out how to use these two players' different play styles. And Dudu, I think also, unfortunately, has been put on Cassante too many times. Like he has such good mechanics. He's an insanely good dominant laner. And because of the team's comps that CV Max is giving him, sometimes he just doesn't really have that much agency. And then Kwangdong just can't get it together. And Cuz is also the best player on this team by a large margin, but he can't save Bull's laning phase when he's playing scaling picks, and he can't save Bulldog's early game when he's not playing Hui. So it feels like the team just is bad for this meta right now, as it's been more figured out. And so the drafts just they're not coming together for me. Like I've been happy with some of the Kwangdong drafts we've seen this season, but recently it just feels like they're a little bit lost because teams know that they just want to play Callista and Hui, and then they ban them, and then Kwangdong was like, what do we do now? It feels like to me, and they got
Yeah,
snapped by Gen.G, which is like not we don't I don't want to read into that.
well, they did get smashed, but like the second game, they at least had some positive things going for them. Like they were kind of in a winnable game state for a little bit there, Wolf.
That's true.
I think they performed pretty well in game number two, especially when they were pulling out some wacky picks like the Ziggs Pike bot lane.
I mean, Andil played that game really well. Like, I went into that game thinking there is just no way this is going to actually be relevant. Like he's just going to get destroyed. But in the early game, he actually made a huge impact around the map. He was roaming well. The Ziggs teleport is super cool because you just kind of farm it up. And then, unfortunately, LeBlanc just started killing the Pike. It was almost like Andal didn't realize at some point in that game that his job was done and he didn't need to just like roam around and fly through the jungle and see if he could find people because at that point they were trying to find him and Chovy did and they won the game. So I don't know. Pike is such a bizarre champion right now in this meta because he feels like such a liability most of the time because he's squishy. And if you have any CC and you know he's flanking, or if you have vision, you just turn on him and kill him. And then you're like, cool, you don't have an engaged support, by the way. And you're playing Ziggs or some other like teleport champion. that's very squishy and doesn't have high damage throughput oftentimes. And you're like, well, good luck. Team fight's over because we killed the Pyke, or the Pyke is super low and has to back and couldn't really be engaged for you anyways. It's not like Blitzcrank because Pyke's hook range isn't long enough to actually like get a prio target or blow up a tank for you, because the tank will just turn on the Pyke and kill the Pyke if you hook the tank. So very different than Blitzcrank and how it operates in terms of late game team fights. But anyways, it's such a weird pick that I thought Andil had a really good understanding of how to play in the early game, but then they couldn't figure out how to transition that into late game. And that's just problematic when there's gold card exists. LeBlanc is going to burst you. Pyke is really bad once you get past a certain point. Cool draft.
I still think, though, that in spite of it being a very tough opponent for Kwangdong, that at least in game number 2, they had a pretty decent, pretty respectable performance. This is why I'm still fine with Kwangdong Wolf. Like, I think Kwangdong is a perfectly fine team.
Losing to Nongshim is kind of
They lost one game to Nongshim.
Yeah, that's any other relevant team is probably not doing that, though. I'm just saying. I'm actually going back to look at the draft because I want to remember what the draft was they lost with. Oh, it was
Nongshim. Wolf. Nongshim took a game off of T1 last week.
Or did T1 take a game off themselves?
All right. Okay. Okay.
No, I mean, look, Nongshim is looking better a little bit. Like Sylvie.
Yeah, Sylvie's good.
Sylvie's actually improving a lot. And they're willing to play Fiesta, which I think is.
Jiwoo has also been good.
Yeah. His area is pretty legit. That game with Bull and Andil playing Kaisa Alistair, that draft made absolutely no sense, and Jiwoo got 11 kills on Zeri. So in a way, actually, that was kind of just not really a game that I want to harp on too much. Because going unsealed spellbook for teleport flanks on Sejuani is also like probably just don't do that. I think Aftershock. I want to like Kwangdong and I want to trust them. And it's like CV Max is the coach, so there's this. He's got the big brain and he's got like insane draft ideas, but I haven't been inspired just yet, to be honest. I was in the early part of the season really looking forward to seeing how this team comes together with Bull, because it's super good, right? We were always doo-doo fans on this show, but I want to see the consistency. I want to see the team do something that wows me, like Gen.G or T1 does, like just once or twice. KT has done that before where I'm like, wow, you have this draft where you haven't.
They beat KT and Dplus.
I'm just saying.
Didn't that wow you? Why are you not impressed, Wolf?
I want to see them. I want to see them do stuff with advantages. Like Kwangdong is so bad at closing games out. Like they get huge advantages and they eventually win, but the whole time you're holding your breath, like, oh, are they gonna throw on the Sparran for some reason, even though they have massive?
Yeah, but they win at the end. They're not like Brion last year.
Yeah, I mean they're not that bad at their advantages, but they're like 2 rungs down. I want to see this team be able to push leads that they have, because I just feel like against any good team, they will always, even when they have leads. And by the way, this has happened against good teams. Like their first match against Gen.G, they had a massive lead. And then you mentioned the other Gen.G game recently as well. They had real win cons there, but they couldn't figure out how to use them, so they died. Against bad teams, they will eventually win every time because the other teams don't know how to punish their setups and stuff like that. But to me, they're like solidly going to be probably our last playoff team, like probably 6th place team, and that's okay. But that's just not interesting to me. I want
Wolf, they could have been 4th place if they didn't lose both games to Brion.
Yeah, they
That's
did
the
do
real
that.
depressing part.
They did do that. Yeah, they did lose both games to Bro.
Like you
gave
can
Bro
lose
their only
one.
win of the season.
you could only, if you just lose one of those, you're 7-5, and you're set up heading into the final weeks probably being able to go, even. But I think like probably best case scenario is that they end 9-9 right now.
Yeah. By the way,
I mean, if they pull off an upset, they can do better. But just with their remaining opponents, I mean, they have T1 DRX next week, Hanwha, Fearex, and then Dplus KT, and they probably win half of those, I'd guess.
So because of the massive disparity between them and Furex, they're 3 wins ahead. We did some calculation yesterday. Like, they can go to playoffs at 6-12. It
Oh
is
yeah.
possible. So they are like unless
Which
Furex.
means that Wolf is saying they could lose all of their remaining matches, which is not going to happen, guys. It's not
It's
going
not
to
gonna happen.
happen.
But I'm just saying, like, they are probably going, it seems like, almost no matter what. Unless
Yeah.
Furex suddenly, um, get it together and actually start winning series against teams of similar skill level to them with like weaker rosters. I don't know if Furex is losing a bunch of games that they shouldn't be losing. Um, then maybe Quantum could be under threat. But right now, I think they're probably going to go to playoffs. It's only we just finished week 6. We're moving to week 7. There's 3 weeks left of LCK, so there's still some movement possible. But it seems like we pretty much know now what our playoff teams are going to be because there's such a huge gap between Kwangdong and the rest of the LCK that even though I'm saying I'm not really that hyped for them, or I don't feel like they're that good right now, they are definitely better than those who are below them in the standings. We could definitely say that. Even though they lost to Bro twice, they're still better than Bro. Those series were weird. Zeri did stuff and came back in the meta. That was for me the moment where Zeri came back. I was like, oh, Bro 2-0 to Kwangdong. Zeri's back. Gotta respect it. But yeah, I don't want to falsely tell people that Kwangdong will be relevant in playoffs because I don't think so. They're gonna get smashed in BO5s. Drafting, I think, still has a lot of work to be done. I want Kwangdong to be the team though that randomly like beats Hanwha Life and we're like, oh, like they're going to upper bracket, they're top 4. I want them to be that team, but I
Me
don't think
too,
they're gonna be
man.
that team.
Yeah.
I want that from them. And until I get that, I'm not gonna be satisfied.
All right, let's talk about Gen.G before we end the show. I know a lot of people probably want us to talk about T1 a little bit, but they had a very easy week, and we're going to be talking a lot about T1 because it's T1 versus Gen.G and T1 versus Kwangdong this next week. And I think Gen.G is important because we got to one of the criticisms that we had about Gen.G was the last time they played KT, they played like complete shit and got 2-0'd. And that was at a point where they were trying some different things. Like they started out the season obviously emphasizing Canyon on a lot of these tank junglers that then got Maokai and Sejuani and a bunch of these other champs consistently banned against Gen.G. And then we saw a kind of switch. He was playing Xin Zhao and Jarvan in the last time against KT. And then this week, we get to see what we really want to see from Canyon, which is like fucking fiddlesticks and jacks jungle. And the difference is this time, Wolf, they win. They win these games as opposed to face planting like they did against KT in their first series.
The Fiddlesticks jungle was actually super fun to watch, and he played it really well in team fights. And actually even was able to like help his team peel for engage. I really enjoyed that. Also just Keen playing range top. Like he played Tristana top, he played Twisted
Yep.
Fate again. Um,
Ooh, the Trist game wasn't great, but
no, well here's my thing about the Trist. Like I actually really like that
oh, it
draft.
was a great draft. He just played it badly.
The
He
the
got
thing
soloed by the Nard, dude. Like,
Yeah, that shouldn't happen, but, like, getting soloed shouldn't happen, but it pulls resources so hard in a lot of different matchups, right? If he's not playing into Gnar, which Perfect is a pretty decent Gnar, then if you're playing into any melee, you can just crush it, and it forces everything to go topside. What do you got bottom? You got a Zeri, you got a Corki. So, like, you have so much pressure on the top side of the map, and when you're playing Twisted Fate, same type of story where you can play a bottom lane that's a little bit more exposed, a little bit more needs to scale before being relevant type of lane, and then pull resources top. If they don't come top, then King gets big, and he just starts taking plates off the turret. You do go top, then bottom side is a little bit more open. I think that type of like tug of war that Gen.G's played with some of these range top drafts is really cool. And I think that's part of why we're seeing top range champions again. I think a lot of people are playing Vayne right now top, and I think that will show up at some point unless, big patch comes through and makes her worse. But a ton of people are playing Vayne top and solo queue. I think that's one that we haven't seen will definitely pop up. Because if you don't give resources and the Vayne is played well into just blind Aatrox, blind Cassante, she's going to get value up there. You got to go up top side and then bottom side gets exposed. So um, I think we're seeing some teams really start to realize how to get value out of these picks top side and then have a scaling bottom side that if you're the better team fighting team, you're gonna have a good time with. And if you have the better top laner, like Keen versus Perfect, Keen shouldn't have been solo killed, right? But I think you feel really confident to just toss that ranged pick in there and say, well, he will not punish me. He needs help. I'm the better laner. I have range advantage. Every top laner hates playing against ranged champs because it's just miserable, right? You make the top laner have a miserable time and call for help. Then you get advantages on the other side. So I like that. I think Keen is good at that. I think Keen has a really amazing champion pool. I mean, he'll play Ryze top. He'll play Urgot. So Gen.G feel like they
I mean, he
have
had
a
some
distinct
great games
advantage.
on Darius earlier this season as well. I mean, look, I love Keen. Keen is my favorite player in the world. Okay, so I'm the one who's constantly talking about Keen Wolf, and like I thought his TF game was super good in game number 1. And I liked the pick of the Tristana. It makes sense in like against the blind picking of the Gnar, and I think it was a very creative solution um to the draft, especially on the red side. But it just wasn't executed the best. But it also shows the threats that are on Gen.G, because while he was getting tortured in the top lane, Pays was getting enormous on Zeri in the bot. And just like aiming, Pays was a huge benefactor um
Zeri
of
coming back.
the Zeri meta, right? That used to exist within the LCK and is now apparently back. So I think this is a big moment both for aiming and Pays, who have had really good games to go ahead and continue to play this.
Yeah, I think Gen.G right now. I haven't made my official prediction, but I think I'm gonna predict them to beat T1 next week. I think they've showcased more flexibility in top. I think T1 has showcased more flexibility in bot lane. But we saw like Senna, Tom Kench. Don't give T1 Senna. Gen.G is not going to give T1 Senna. I think that they might have some other cool stuff they want to do to punish Pays' Zeri, for example, if he plays that, or if he ends up just playing Smolder. I think they're going to have the answer for that bottom lane. T1's drafting is insanely good right now. But they are kind of blinding Aatrox a lot, and I think the play style of Gen.G and Keen's ability to pick a ranged pick and then try to bully the Aatrox and pull owner top with Canyon being super smart as well with his pathing. I think there could be something there where T1 get behind early, and I do think that whoever gets ahead in both of these, or rather for both of these teams in this best of 3 in every game will probably win. Even though historically we've seen some like wacky games with like even earlier this season, like I'm playing Belveth into Gen.G and the draft wasn't good from T1 there. I think this one matters more. This one is like, okay, you win this, you're probably getting first place. You're gonna have that extra advantage for playoffs kind of game. So I don't think we'll see any weird drafting. But I think if you get ahead, neither of these teams will ever gonna let that go. They're both just so good at pushing advantages. Early game matters so much, and I think that we've seen T1 be really good at early game around the bottom side of the map, faker diving, turret dives and stuff bottom side. Top side though, that's where I feel like Gen.G has a huge advantage there. So I feel like for me, I'm 55-45 leaning towards Gen.G going into the series.
I mean, it would be exciting for the playoffs to have Gen.G as the 2-0 winners of this series, because then T1 coming in as a bit of an underdog is kind of a fun narrative. The defending world champs as an underdog in the playoffs. I just looked it up, by the way. Keen has played Tristana one other time, Wolf, in his entire professional career. It was in 2021 when he was on Africa Freaks.
Yeah.
And he beat T1. He actually beat T1 with the Trist top on the shitty old Africa Freaks roster. He went 5-0-5 on top lane Tristana into Gnar. So Kana was playing Gnar in that game. So it was actually into this Gnar matchup previously. And this is what I love about Keen, is that he has such a deep bag of tricks. And it's like he's such a veteran player, but he's not afraid to go into his champion pool and just play this matchup he's played one other time 3 years ago, and here it is again. Like, it's great. It's great.
Yeah. The mid matchup for that, that series that we have coming up next week, the T1 Gen.G, is super interesting because basically Chovy and Faker have the best laning stats in the LCK. So who gets a lane advantage there? What matchup do they get? Nico will be back enabled. I have confirmation of that. I was told that she's going to be enabled.
Are we changing patch next week?
Yeah. So
Okay.
moving to 13.4, if I'm not remembering the number wrong.
14.4.
Yeah, 14.4. But Nico's back, so that's very relevant for this series.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
going to be a good one. I mean, I think this series
Because
is
Canyon's going to play it in the jungle.
He could. Carry is going to play it in the bot lane.
That's true.
So
It's a flex pick for T1. You never know.
So I
So-
think don't miss this game. Like I don't care what time it is on. Just follow social media and find out when LCK is going to tell you to watch it because it's going to be really really sick. It's going to be by far the best game of the season that we've had. In the last T1 Gen.G one, because it was done on day one where nobody knew anything. Stop doing that to me, LCK. That one was shit. This one is actually going to be good. This one is actually going to be top tier. Watch it.
All right. Very good. Very good. Yeah, a very exciting series coming up this week. Really meaningful as we get back into kind of the end of the season. Especially, I mean, look, we know there's a distinct top three, like T1, Gen.G, Hanwha are clearly the top three teams in this league. But we do have a pretty exciting jockeying for seeding going on between Dplus, KT, and Kwangdong. And this matters because basically, the ability to not be last place and play Hanwha in the first round is meaningful, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is.
It's pretty huge because the first two teams are going to get the possibility of the bye into the next round. Which I suppose, Wolf, it's not a foregone conclusion that we couldn't have some kind of crazy upset here because basically when T1 and Gen.G play each other, obviously one of them has to lose. So, if Hanwha can pull off an upset over Gen.G next week, that could actually knock Gen.G potentially down into third place, right?
Yeah, because that's how close Hanwha is to them
Yeah.
in the standings.
Yeah, so getting, T1 probably, or, the week after that, T1 plays Hanwha. And so if Hanwha can win that and T1 loses the Gen.G matchup, all of a sudden we have a situation where one of the top two teams could find themselves not getting that bye. So the top three teams still are going to be jockeying for position. And then the other teams, like not playing whoever is in that third place spot, so not ending up sixth, is extremely important because it'll give you a better chance to make a deep playoff run. So there is actually quite a bit of excitement and meaningful matches coming up in the next 3 weeks of competition as we close out the regular season.
Yeah, no, it's going to be good. I think a lot of this middle of the LCK this season was very weak in terms of exciting matchups, and we had a lot of weeks that were either stomps or just like bad teams play against each other. And now it's like really going to be the kind of exciting conclusion to find out who's going where. The playoffs conversation is usually a really exciting part of the end of the season where we're like, oh, could X team make playoffs? Nah, it's already decided. Like, it's probably not going to be interesting there at all, unless Fearx has a really exciting glow up, like we talked about earlier. So that's not. Don't be looking towards like the 6th place, 7th place cutoff line. Just be looking above that. Just push the other teams.
The playoff seeding race is actually very exciting. Like, it actually is very exciting. We're going to end up with a lot of good games to close out the season, especially because a lot of the top three teams, I mean, the top three teams are all just going to play each other in these last 3 weeks. And we have a lot of competition too within the 4th through 6th place seeds. So really meaningful games. This week was kind of a wash, honestly. The last couple weeks haven't been super exciting, but it is going to get very exciting, I think, from here on out.
Yeah, agree. So we'll find out what happens. I love to see the Hanwha, be the team that was, KT in spring last year, where they had that run and they pushed T1 to 5 games in the upper bracket after T1 picked them. We had that really cool Telecom War series. I feel like Hanwha reminds me of that KT in spring. Obviously, they became much more dominant in summer, but a team that could maybe challenge the top teams if they can play a good best of 5. That's my hope because, as you guys know, you watch this show, I do not want a 5th T1 Gen.G finals. I don't want it. I don't want to cap the same storylines. Like last time, it was like, oh, but Gen.G's slightly different. Rumor's gone. I already did that storyline. Gen.G's slightly different this time.
What do you mean they're majority different? It is a different storyline. Most of the players got replaced. Come on, we got Canyon, we got Keen. Who cares about Lehens? We got Canyon, we got Keen. Fuck Lehens.
Lehens was on Gen.G before the first one. Like, he was already there before. You can't say it's different.
That's true. That's why fuck Lehens, okay? But also, I think the Keen and Canyon editions are very exciting. They are very exciting, and it's really changed the quality of this team too. So they're a very different team stylistically than when they were winning with the kind of Peanut, Doran, Chovy core that they used to have.
Just Hanwha, Zeka, figure it out, man. Play more champions and be good, and Peanut be consistent. And Doran,
he's been working on that for years, Wolf. I don't think we're going to see a breakthrough at this point.
Look, remember Doran when Doran's Gragas in the finals where he got robbed by Pays because he was a Royal Roader? He got robbed of MVP even though Doran deserved MVP. Like,
that's true.
I need to see that Doran come back, and then maybe Zeka just plays Yone every game somehow, and that's what I need. I just need Hanwha to make it. I don't care if it's Hanwha versus T1. I don't care if it's Hanwha versus Gen.G. Just I'm praying for an exciting underdog
the
story.
Afrika Freaks. That's my world. And I'm sticking to it, Wolf.
Good luck with that.
I mean, Kwangdong. I keep calling them Afrika, but it's Kwangdong.
I mean,
but yeah, they're the ones. It's the same org. They're the one. They're still owned by Afrika. They're the ones that I want to actually have as the crazy dark horse who would get mega smashed in a best of 5 in the final by anybody, and it would be a horrible final, but at least they would have gotten there.
Remember, Griffin, CV Max, Pantheon, Talia? It'd be like it would be like that.
I'm here for it, Wolf. There's you wished for a different team. It's going to be a fucking horrible final with Kwangdong Freaks in the final randomly. All right, that'll do it for this week. We'll be back with you next week, guys. Of course, to talk all about the hugely hype matches, particularly T1 versus Gen.G, but lots of good games coming up in the next week. Hopefully, they will be played live with a live audience in the arena, because it is going to be a big bummer not to have crowd reactions for that T1 versus Gen.G game, to feel that energy. So we'll hope it happens, and we'll see you next week.